Welcome to Legacy Lines. Today's date is February 19th, 2025, and this is episode number 14. Legacy Lines is where each episode is a journey into the wisdom that shapes our lives. I'm Jason, your guide through stories and strategies that forge exceptional paths. Here, we dive into the teachings that have not only shaped my life, but can redefine yours. From the biblical landscapes that guide us to the financial acumen that builds empires. Join me as we unpack the tool sets for extraordinary results. This isn't just knowledge, it's a legacy in the making. And as the bumper music continues to play, I just wanted to open up today with saying how powerful it is to connect with people. People that are I would say people in general, but people that make you get the perspective of getting your mind right. I just got off the phone over the last couple of hours with two important people in my life. Both are just incredible men, and when I hang up the phone, it's rare that we just get extended times to speak, but when we do, when I hang up the phone, it's just a refreshing nature that comes into my soul. Very, very thankful for that. So a little bit about that. I am actually, and I'll get into this as we unpack the episode, I'm actually on somewhat of a sabbatical retreat, whatever you want to call it, Sabbath. And I am away from my family for the next few days. So depending on when you listen to this, I will have went on a journey to do some deep thinking, to reflect, and to redefine what some of the next steps might possibly be for my wife and I and our family. And as we get into today's episode, it's going to focus on when we're enrolled into the school of real life hard knocks, what do you do? What do you do with that? And what is the right way to process through your mindset? What is the right way to react? What emotions do you need to feel? And I'll just be transparent with you. This is something that I'm living with real time right now. And as we look to today's presentation, the title, Turning Setbacks into Opportunities, and of course, with some of my general themes here being on brand, if you will, the best is yet to come. So I'm going to jump in with, life is full of unexpected challenges. We know that. That's nothing new. This episode really is going to explore how to turn setbacks into opportunities for growth and discover the bigger possibilities that likely await, even though your emotions may not feel that way. So here we go. I'm going to do my best to articulate this. And for those of you that don't know, this podcast is primarily for me to create a digital archive of myself to give away to my children. And that's exactly what I'm doing here today. Life's lessons, letting my scars be known to them as they become of age and consume this content. It is my mission to be fully authentic with them in the good, bad, and the ugly of our successes in life, but also our failures. And so as I talk about this unexpected setback, I just want to share my story and share what is going on in my life kind of real time right now. So I have worked in software for a long time and technology, whatever you want to call it. And on January 15th, I got called into a real sudden meeting. And the first sentence, I get into the meeting and there is my VP there. And the first sentence went something like this. It was, the company is moving a different direction and your job is being affected. And today's going to be your last day working, and it's my last day as well. That was my VP saying that. And the call lasted for somewhere around 13 minutes. But honestly, it kind of felt like the Charlie Brown teacher after that with the wah, 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 wah. It was surprising. It was sudden. It was abrupt. It was emotional. It was a lot of things. And I would say the the feeling that I hung up and then immediately started to process was somewhat of a, this isn't really happening. I have been laid off one other time when I was 19 years old, at the beginning of my career, and it was February of 1998 is what that would have been. No, 97, excuse me. And I was laid off for 1 month, and then I have never been laid off ever since then. And I would prefer to use the language. A mentor of mine gave me this analogy, and I think language is important. Language matters. And the framing of it is, instead of using the language of laid off, I want to use the framing of free agency. Very on purpose, the idea of free agency. And as we get into why, I'll unpack that a little bit. I always have to get 3 or 4 unpacks into each episode, as everybody knows. So all right. Well, I was going to pause the episode, but for whatever reason, my tech isn't working, so we're just going to keep on going. And after that, so thankfully, as a family, my wife and I had really already processed that this might be a possibility for a variety of reasons. I'll be very succinct with this. Our company, or my previous company, was in the process of being acquired, and basically they are not going to continue to grow the business in the section of the company that I worked in. So I understand that. And we had already kind of processed that this might be a possibility of this happening at some point in the near future here. So I can say that some of the emotions weren't as strong as they could have been amongst the company's shifting product initiatives. I don't want to say the writing was completely on the wall, but at the same time, it's like you would be wise to consider that this might be a real thing. So, entering into that, what then is required of me? So my initial thoughts and the mindset shift that I am choosing right now. So what now versus what if this is a setup for something greater? And I think that is always, that's always an important question to be asking. Being comfortable is not necessarily the best thing. Being comfortable doesn't mean it's just going to be that way all the time. You can have life come in and I don't want to say steal your comfort. That's a poor way to frame it, but really it was what now versus what if this is a setup for something greater? And ironically enough, we had, we're Bible-believing Christians, Christ followers, and in the kindness of the Lord, we had gotten somebody that we really respect their walk of faith, had given what we call a prophetic word to us, that God in his kindness today is still speaking to his children and his church and to the world as a whole, that he is invested deeply into what happens not only in the global stratosphere of his creation, but also in the hearts and lives of his believers and followers, or for everybody. He has a heart for people, you could say. So we had gotten a word from this person that said, and I wrote it down and I should have it up here, but I'll paraphrase it, but it was, a prophetic door is opening in the marketplace. Marketplace is typically referred to in Christian circles as anything outside of the church, and you need to walk through it, or you're going to be asked to walk through it. It was something of that nature. Well, this was January 5th, and this meeting with HR that I'm talking about happened 10 days later. And so at the time I was thinking, oh, what does this mean? I'm trucking right along. I'm invigorated. I enjoy my compensation. I like how this works for our personal life and where we're going with our big life goals and things of that nature. And what now? January 15th. What now versus the what if this is a setup for something greater? So as I was getting this news real time, the kindness of the Lord and having a history in how he's organized, and we have partnered with, of course, our skill sets and giftings under the banner of stewardship, what we've been able to walk into, and when I mean we, I'm meaning my wife and I as our family, has quite frankly been unbelievable. It's been extremely humbling, and I'm very, very grateful for it. Very, very grateful for it. So, that being said, from that premise, I also had a few other colleagues on my personal team that was affected as well. There was four of us that got together a couple days later on a Zoom meeting and was just talking out loud and, how are you guys doing? Blah, 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 and all this stuff. And what when you're squeezed, what is really inside of you comes out. Now, I want to give them a measure of mercy and grace. It's a scary thing to lose a job. I am grateful that we have lived a life on living on less than what we make. So at the same time, there is an emergency fund that we have in place that allows for the risks of these types of seasons to be minimized, if you will. But as I watched the emotions of others, I saw some go into survival mode, what I would call survival mode. Unfortunately, a couple of my colleagues, some of them vocalized that we have 2 house payments and, blah, blah, blah. What? Okay, that's great. Well, it's not great. It's not great for you now. But they went into survival mode, which is a natural tendency. And again, to give a measure of mercy. While to me, I saw this as a refining moment to stretch and to grow almost immediately. And I can't explain it other than a grace to do that. So I just chose to see that as a refining moment. And I can break that down a little bit more. What I would call a refining moment would be the critical difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset in high stakes moments. That's what I have prepared to talk about. The critical difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset in high stakes moments. So taking this down a couple levels here, what I immediately started to think about was a couple things, a couple principles. At this season of my wife and I's life, our biggest wealth building tool is our income. Over the course of time, we hope to have assets built up in a fashion that is not the case, where we cross the threshold of financial independence, where your wealth generation machine is kicking off more than your requirements and still growing throughout the course of your life. If I had to guess, we might be 10 years out from that, just give or take, depending on how things go. And that is a guess because I have no idea what the future holds, but I can tell you the best is yet to come. So starting with the premise that our biggest wealth building tool is our income at this time. And then secondly, another operating principle that we operate by is I want to make the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time possible, because the number one thing that takes me away from my family the most is my work. And I'm not mad about that. I accept that. I like to work. But at the same time, I'm not doing it to not move the needle. So those two premises in mind, our number one wealth building tool is our income, and the number one thing I want to make the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time possible, because my work is the number one thing that takes me away from my family in the area of time the most. Okay, so then I have an opportunity to reframe what I'm actually being able or allowed to walk into in the area of time, okay? In the area of time, meaning I have an emergency fund, I have time, I've been given a gift to be able to look at my biggest source of wealth building, my income, and refine that and possibly take a large step up in the area of responsibility and merit, and that equals pay. So what am I going to do about that? What am I going to do about that? We'll get into that in a moment. But the ways to process a setback are basically as follows. You can have a victim mentality. It's I lost something. I'm falling behind. Everybody is beating me. I can never seem to get ahead. Why did this happen to me? And that's real. That is not... Those feelings are real. Those are real feelings that happen. Whether that's truth or not, I would say, is up to the individual to dig deep and see why, if those things are true. But in the moment, processing the setback, that is the victim mentality. I lost something. I'm falling behind. And why did this happen to me? A growth mentality would sound something like this. This is an opportunity to pivot. The best is yet to come. I've heard that before somewhere. The best is yet to come. How can I steward this season for greater impact? And, the list goes on. I'll keep it succinct to this. So, what did I choose? What did I choose to do? Well, I would like to think I got it all figured out, but I don't have it all figured out. But what I did do is I vetted and enrolled in a product manager academy to sharpen my skills instead of simply networking for the next job. I'm very, very grateful that I have the ability to have a strong network within my area of expertise. I'm very, very grateful that the last 2 jobs that I have taken of my W-2 side of my life have been through connections. Have literally been either I saw a job posting and I contacted somebody in the organization and was in front of the hiring team in short order and got the job. As a matter of fact, my last 2 jobs, they're the only 2 jobs I applied for. So I am living out some new territory here, taking a very methodical approach to sharpen my skills instead of simply networking for the next job, which is powerful. Man, it's powerful. And I might end up in that. I haven't landed my next gig yet. And I'm using this time to reassess my long-term vision instead of that taking just that next step and opportunity of convenience, or I would call this like where the water flows, you just keep going there. I don't want to be a person that just takes easy by default. I don't want to just do what I've always done. I think it's Grace Ann Hopper. She was in some branch of the service, and as a matter of fact, this is on one of the walls of it used to be on one of the walls of the Pittsburgh airport. As you're going down an escalator, it says one of the scariest phrases in the human language is, quote unquote, "We've always done it this way." I love that. She was actually a fun little history story. She was actually one of the founders and designers of the COBOL computer code. I think you'll have to fact check me on that. I could do that if my pause button was working, but since I am not somebody that just does things the same way all the time, and I'm continuing to bring on new tech as I am on my journey to get a podcast that I'm happy with. Again, this is not going to be a high production value podcast, but at the same time, I do have standards and qualifications of iterations over the course of time. So where was I going with all that? I was going to fact check myself, but I can't. So, because my pause button isn't working. Good thing for you, my pause button decided to work. So I was able to fact check myself, and this will be important. So children, Grace Hopper did invent was one of the pioneers inside of the government. And she was at a 2-day conference known as the Conference on Data Systems Languages. And Hopper served as a technical consultant to the committee, and many of her former employees served on the short-term committee that defined the new language COBOL, C-O-B-O-L. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is, children, your grandfather was a computer programmer that specialized in that language, C-O-B-L, COBOL, and that is an acronym for Common Business Oriented Language. I did not know that, and that was in the spring of 1959, so very, very old computer code. And here is something hilarious. That code is still rampant throughout the world, so it was a great language. And it went on to be the most ubiquitous business language code to date that's ever been. And it's crazy. Many government databases are still out there running that code. I digress. We'll get back on subject. So the scariest saying in the human language is we've always done it that way. So I didn't want to just do it that way. So the rest of the day when I got the news, what I did is I decided to do something different. I called 20 or 25, I can't remember, business colleagues inside of the organization on a video. And I said, hey, I just want you to know that I am here to tell you thank you. I am here. You impacted my life in a great way. We partnered together. And their immediate reaction was, oh, I'm so sorry. And, I would do the same thing. Okay, let's just be honest. I would do the same thing. But the reality of why I was calling was to say, you were awesome. And I wanted to express genuine gratitude for working alongside each of them. And I wasn't calling to seek sympathy. I would say many of them defaulted to the next step of survival, but I wanted to communicate that I'm choosing growth over fear. And again, like I just appreciate people. It's wonderful that there's this human element to humanity is exposed when something like this goes on. And I should make it known, there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 750 to 1,000 of us within that day. So it was, morale was very raw. I'll say it that way. I wanted to choose growth over fear and make that known. And surprisingly enough, many of them who I wouldn't classify as faith professing individuals all of a sudden had some measure of faith that everything happens for a reason and people are looking out for you and God's got a plan and that's, dude, awesome. But Lord, let it be so that even amongst regularity of the day in and day out of life, we're living our life like that. Make it so, God, for us. I'll get off the sermon. So what actions did I take? Let's talk about some practical steps for the team here. Like I said, I wanted to own the reality without complaining. And I'm living this real time. I wanted to take time to assess before reacting emotionally. And I researched the market trends instead of spiraling into discouragement. So let me back up a little bit. I had mentioned this briefly, just passed over it, but I vetted and bounced off my mentors, 5 of them, as a matter of fact, the opportunity as I gathered information real time about an academy that is for top tier product managers in the world. Now, this is not a recruiting agency. This is pay to play. It's a healthy amount of money. It doesn't make a lot of sense to people that don't have a growth mindset that you're going to do what? You're going to pay a large sum of money and you just got free agency. Remember that language matters. But I felt like it was critical for my own growth and to not be comfortable just doing what I've always done. So I invested in growth. Rather than scrambling for what's next, I saw this as an opportunity to stretch myself. A job loss doesn't erase years of experience, skill, and relationships. And having the opportunity to refine and get really surgical about where I want to work next, that I saw that as a powerful opportunity that I'm living out right now, living out day to day. And I wanted to, so step 1, own the reality without complaining. Step 2, invest in growth. Step 3, steward the transition season well. So time is a resource. We never get that back. So how can I'm asking this to myself and to you children, to you audience, how can you use this season wisely? And I chose to keep, as a matter of fact, I had a colleague reach out today. I am I already said I'm on a little bit of a retreat. So up until this week, I have kept rigorous business hours, keeping a daily structure instead of waiting for something to happen. I'm not going to do that. That is a recipe for disaster. I want to keep on my daily prioritized list. I want to keep on the things that have made me successful, not shrink back from them. And then step 4, reframe the long game. Oh, I like that. Reframe the long game. Where do I actually want to go? Instead of just looking at the next paycheck, this is a chance for me to step into something even greater. So let me talk about what that looks like for a moment. So in real practical ways, catching you up on the background details, which is a fair amount, the Product Academy is a very methodical process. So I'm going to try to hit the phases, the high tops of the trees, if you will. Very simply put, you focus on why your resume matters to anybody. You strip out all the language, all the human elements. It actually feels very transactional. But when you are talking about very high-paying jobs, the best of the best product managers in the world, companies don't want to get it wrong. They want to make the exact right hire. So you have to do hours of internal soul-seeking on, did my work really matter, and why did it matter to anybody that doesn't know anything about me? That process took me about 2 weeks to do. Then you have your approved resume, and then you move into what's called outreach. Outreach is your target companies. So I have a list of 27 companies that starting next week, I'm going to be applying for the jobs, and you want to be in the first 30 in the first day of the job listing within 3 hours of the job listing. There's various ways to get there through third-party applications, Indeed, LinkedIn, whatever. I was going to say Monster, but I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. Wherever you find jobs. And on the heels of that, part of outreach is also customized resumes per job with the intention of you have applied up to 100 of them in the next 30 to 45 days of really targeted jobs of places where you want to work. On the back end of that is all the reconnaissance, follow up with hiring managers, seeing if you can get to the right people in the organization, leveraging contacts within the Product Academy, that is another big reason why I chose to make this investment. Was I am running in circles of people that I literally never had one single connection of over 1,000 connections on LinkedIn at this level of individuals that I'm rubbing shoulders with. Real quick story. Last Thursday, I was on a town hall session. That's not a town hall. It was a group session. It was a Q&A, ask me anything, whatever you want to call it, with a corporate recruiter for Disney Technologies of the Americas, who was previously at Meta as well. And New York City gal, awesome, very driven, very focused, and was giving me knowledge and information. For example, we always like to talk about finances, right? She said, some of these roles have just crazy ranges listed, anywhere from 100 to 600,000. Crazy, right? That doesn't even make sense. She goes, now keep in mind, this lady is part of the academy. She also, in her day job, is doing this for one of these companies that I could potentially be getting hired for. I don't know what you do at Disney. Maybe work on the next Slinky roller coaster ride. I don't know. But anyways, whatever. I probably won't be applying there. That being said, she said, you should do the same thing. You should give some crazy range because you don't want to limit your influence. Now, natural inclination would think, well, that would be unwise to do. That there's no way. Why would you ever want to do that? And her premise was, you never know what anybody is willing to negotiate up to, and you don't want to leave $30 to $60 to $150,000 on the table, because that's real. Now, that piece of information right there was worth the cost of admission, okay? That was worth the cost of admission right there, that one single piece of information. Because, let's just gamify that out. I'll tell you exactly how much it was to be in there. I got a discount because I was accepted and highly skilled at what I do. and it was $11,900 to enroll in this academy. The academy is largely as fast as you can do it at the highest amount of quality possible. So, and it usually takes 90 to 120 days. Going back to the phases, that piece of information was valuable. So then you try to get to the stakeholders, and the ultimate is you want to get into several negotiations at one time for opportunities and pit them against each other. And a lot of this largely feels, to be honest with you, in one of the conversations I was talking about earlier today, it feels fake, feels staged. But that's the game. So you got to get wise at the game. You got to be somebody that understands how the world really works, and then use who you are to affect that in a positive kingdom way. But you got to know what you're dealing with first, and you have to be eyes wide open to some of that. So moving on from that, I wanted to steward the transition well, and how can I use this season wisely? And I kept a daily structure. And then step 4, reframe the long game. Reframe the long game. Instead of just looking for that next paycheck, this was a chance to step into something even greater. Reframe the long game. I like that. Reframe the long game. So if I look ahead and if I say, where do I want to go? I don't know. I'm already doing things that I literally never dreamed in my wildest dreams that I would have the opportunity to do, just to be completely authentic. And I can tell you why that is. Because the biblical living out of principles really works. I'm a living example of that. So as we look at these building blocks, if you will, I kind of feel like that's upside down. But again, I made this with gamma in like 32 seconds. So here we are. I'll keep iterating. I'll figure it out. I didn't make these notes in 32 seconds. I made this presentation off of the notes. I should qualify that. Remember, AI makes you more of what you already are. It's not going to make an idiot smart. That's not a thing. But looking at Romans 8:28, and we know that and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. I love God. I have been called to live out his purpose. I can get very pragmatic about this scripture, knowing that he has called me to partner with him, and the best is yet to come, because God is always working behind the scenes, even when we can't see it yet. And I have had days recently of fighting imposter syndrome. Like, should I just should I just go do what I've always done? And no. Frick, no. 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 I don't know what that is. But looking at also the framing of challenges from a biblical landscape here, James 1:2-4. Consider, this is hard. I'm going to do it in my best, auto attendant voice, okay? That's very welcoming and inviting, just to see even the power of how we say things and how powerful the tone actually is. Here we go. All right. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Or you could read it like this. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And I should have had my full camera on. I'll do that one more time. You guys ready? James 1:2-4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. No, it's both of those, right? It's in the middle. It's a confidence. It's consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. That's awesome. What if this season is all about developing endurance in my life, is allowing me the gift to be able to run with more endurance, to finish my journey stronger and not just get through it, not just eke over the finish line of life. No. And then last but not least, the parable of the talents. I'm going to, very truncate this, but that's Matthew 25, 14 through 30. It's not just about money. It's about maximizing whatever is in your hands and understanding that we are simply managers cooperating with what God chooses to pass through our hands. And when we think about this from a legacy perspective, how do we want our children and those around us to remember how we handled adversity? Do we want to be somebody that's known for, shrieking back, or not a shrinking violet's not a nice way to put it, but what do we want to be known for? And children, I pray, and I am trying to model to you, living out my life, that when you see your mom and I allow you that intimate access into the trials of our life and also the mountaintops of our life, that you'll remember that my mom and dad handled adversity well. They persevered. They relied upon God. They considered it pure joy. And dude, I am working on that one. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. But let that be a rallying point to us. So, every reaction writes part of our life story. And are we willing, I'm trying to think through this. So because every reaction writes part of our life story, or your life story, listener, are you writing a narrative of fear or faith? Fear or faith? And I'm asking myself that right now. Today I feel good. I've been praying today. I've been seeking the Lord's face. I've been partnering with Him. I've been talking with trusted people in my life. But that's today, right? What am I going to do tomorrow? How am I going to persevere? And of course, I'm not going to let you out of here without takeaways. So a couple comments and then a call to action. So your belief system shows up in your response to setbacks, period. Whether that's relationally, fiscally, whatever illy way that I can't think of right now that you want to insert into there for your story. Every hardship can be an opportunity if you have the mindset of growth and stewardship. 100%. And of course, the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come, but only if you choose to believe it and take action. So what's the call to action today? Call to action, I would simply propose to you. What's one setback that you faced in hindsight that was actually a setup for something better? And then reflect on how your past experiences have prepared you for the next big thing, and get ready to step into the opportunity in front of you. And the best is yet to come. Take care. I've enjoyed sharing my heart with you today in a level of authenticity, knowing that we're all just out there trying to work our way through this thing called life. And I would say, as a Christ follower, I would encourage you to lean into trying to partner in whatever that looks like for your life. And then if you're not a Christ follower, know that there's a God out there that died for you, that gave His Son Jesus on the cross so you could enter into that oneness with Him that I'm frequently talking about. And remember, the best is yet to come. Take care.